Welcome to the On the Edge podcast with your host, Scott Groves.
Hey, what's everybody? It's Scott Groves. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. We're recording here in an evening, and this might be the first ever evening podcast where I'm not smoking a cigar, but I've got a little bit of a sore throat, and I've got to host a 2-day event here. We're recording this in January 2023. It'll drop in February of 2023, and I'm here with my new friend, Rich Zapata, who I actually met through Jiu-Jitsu, which is weird because we've rolled on the mat a few times, and then coincidentally, somebody tagged you in something on Instagram, and then I saw some of your artwork. So Rich is a tattoo artist by trade. We'll make sure to put his link up on Instagram. It is Zapata X Tattoos with an S, and we'll make sure we link to all of that. But I just saw your work, man, and as the least artistic person you've probably ever met, like I can F up a stick figure. I was like, oh, this is some good stuff, man. I got to hear about this journey from like however somebody goes from school to art to I want to put ink on people for a living. So I don't know anything about you, man. Married, kids, lifelong Las Vegas Eamon. Stepdad? Okay, cool.
Right now, yeah, to a 7-year-old.
Oh, very cool,
Been in
man.
her life since she was about 2.5.
Oh, so you're dad, basically. Yeah. I mean, well, if you've been around since 2, yeah.
That's what I was doing today. Being dad mode. You know,
You're in dad
doing
mode.
Yard work, stuff like that. So picking her up from school.
Sweet.
I enjoy it.
So tell us about this journey, man. Like, were you into art when you were a kid? Like, how does this happen that one becomes a tattoo artist? Because it seems like a very niche field, right?
No, yeah, for sure. I mean, growing up, I've always been artistic. You know, drawing, doing all types of art, whether it's like photography, video, stuff like that. And I was always naturally inclined to it. But just growing up in school, I was always told like, oh, you got to go to school, you got to go to college. You know, and growing up, like we didn't have the internet as much as we do now.
Just for context, how old are you?
I'm 28.
Okay.
So I was born in 94.
Okay.
Yeah, 90s kid.
90s kid, there you go.
Yeah. So just grow up just with that mindset, like, all right, I got to do good at school. I got to be a good kid. I got to do what I'm told. And eventually I'll get to where I need to be, right? So, you know, as much as I have a career path that can take you to, and like that'll take you a lot, you know, pretty far. Sorry, I'm trying to dissect my thoughts for a second.
Yeah, go for it. Huh?
Yeah. So it was kind of like never really like set good with me. Like I've always wanted to like incline more into like an artistic field, but I was always told like it's kind of hard to do that. But now with the internet, it's become so much easier, you know. But the way I mostly started was with music. I did like drawings and stuff and whatnot, but I grew up doing a lot of music. And in music, I found like a philosophy where I'm just like, hey, you know, at first I learned guitar. I was in a mariachi band for a bit. I played at a church.
Really?
Yeah. So I played guitar, and then I slowly was interested in bass and kind of like other instruments, and I kind of would jam things out and be like, oh, okay, this is right here on the bass, or this is right here on the piano and whatnot. And slowly I kind of figured like, hey, like whatever I kind of set my mind to and really dedicate my time to, and like I'm really about, I'll kind of like learn how to do that.
Right.
And like I learned that at such a young age, which a lot of people kind of are still learning, I feel.
For context, when did you start playing music?
Like 10 years old.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I was like jamming guitar, and I was always insisting on my parents like, hey, I want to play guitar, I want to do something. So one day for Christmas I got a guitar, and I just kind of like just started like playing what I could. And then slowly kind of like learn mariachi, because that's like where I would learn a lot of my music, because my mom would take me to a class, which she only knew like Hispanics. We're Hispanic, you know, they're from Mexico. Yeah. Immigrant parents.
Where are your parents from, by the way, in Mexico?
My mom's from Jalisco and my dad's from Zacatecas, but they met in LA.
Of course, like everybody else.
In LA, and just kind of like I was born in Ridgecrest, California, which is in the middle of nowhere. And then we moved to the Bay Area, and we moved out to here when I was like in 2003. Sorry, I'm all over the place.
No, it's good. So. This is how these conversations always go. My wife's from about 2 hours outside of Guadalajara. It's a little tiny hole-in-the-wall town called La Palma that you would never go to unless you happen to be from there.
Yeah, my mom's from Autlan, which is also like 3 hours from Guadalajara. Okay. I'm not sure in which direction La Palma might be in, but that's cool.
You're going to have to look this up, Chris. You're going to have to see how close La Palma is to, what's the city?
It's like southeast of Guadalajara, like on the big lake there.
Awesome. We're in Autlan de Navarro, or Autlan de la Grana, whatever it may be.
There you go. Chris spends a lot of time in Mexico. So,
yeah, it's beautiful over there, man. Jalisco, I love Jalisco. It's so beautiful.
Did you get back there at all? Or
I was just there in I want to say September.
Cool.
Yeah.
So your parents probably knew at like 10 years old. They're like, oh man, it's probably not happening. Rich is probably going to he's probably going into music and art.
Yeah, that kind of like pushed me like learning guitar. Like I grew up in like the whole like emo phase kind of thing where I was like, oh, I want to be in a metal band, I want to be in a rock band, I want to be a punk band. So I slowly started playing metal, and I was in a band at like 15, 16 years old where we actually played like pretty big shows. Like we jammed at a House of Blues before. We played a couple festivals with a couple of big metal bands and stuff like that. And
nice.
It was pretty cool, but it was almost like I was living the rock star life at like high school. It was like, whoa, this is insane. Like this is.
So you were good. You weren't like a scrub.
We had a good following, I want to say. Yeah.
What was the name of the band? Just
I'd rather just keep it under wraps.
All right, cool.
Yeah. CTC, let's leave it at that.
Okay, perfect. Okay, CTC.
Yeah. But it was cool. But so I after I finished playing music, I was going more into the route of becoming a firefighter and an EMT. Why
did you stop playing music? Like if you were playing House of Blues, playing some the festival circuit,
I feel like the music we were playing was almost it was seasonal. I want to say it wasn't like it wasn't timeless for sure. It was a lot of screaming and like singing and stuff like that.
Got it.
You know, nowadays those bands I still listen to here and there. You know, to get me hyped for jiu-jitsu and whatnot and working out.
Give me a famous band that would be in the genre of what you guys played. You like Korn? Were you just like screaming at the sky, or
kind of? It was more of like I guess Bring Me the Horizon kind of feel. That's like a more popular band in that genre, kind of more like screamo, like deathcore, I guess you could say. Yeah, dude, that's what we used to call it back in the day. Screamo. It's like emo but screaming, you know.
Oh man, that's funny. Chris worked at a record label when he first got out of high school, so he's got some pretty. What record studio was it, Chris?
Drive-through records.
Drive-through records, yeah. Nice. So he worked there. So he got to come across against a lot of the emo bands.
Yeah, for sure. Like the whole, like I want to say, like 2010 to like 2015-ish, where it was like the big boom. I don't know. I could be wrong.
Yeah, Drive-through. Their heyday was like 2005 to 10.
Nice.
Or early 2000s.
Yeah. Who are some of the bands that you guys had on the label?
They were like a pop punk label, so they had Newfound Glory and Hello Goodbye and Finch.
Yeah, a lot of people that had like real bad albums and then like 2 good ballads that would make it onto the radio.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of these bands are still jamming. A lot of them are still like playing music and whatnot. And it's kind of like what inspired me too with like, I guess, my style and whatnot. Like I really related to that, which I still can, you know what I mean?
Do you still play for fun, or have you kind of completely put that away?
I'll jam here and there. Like I'll pick up a guitar and I can always like play certain things. I do need to pick it back up because it's one of those things like you don't want to lose that, you know? It's like,
yeah. I really want our kids to play an instrument, and you know, I know I have the propensity to be the crazy dad. Like even when I see the kids in jiu-jitsu, it takes every fiber of my being to not run out on the mat and be like, do this right. Why are you doing that? Why are you getting taken down? And so I'm just worried if we get them an instrument in the house, I'm gonna be like, practice every day for 35 minutes or you're gonna fail. So how would you introduce kids to, now that you have a stepdaughter, and you played instruments for a long time, how would you introduce kids to instruments?
So I just got her a little acoustic guitar too.
Cool.
You said this is airing in February.
Yeah.
So my plan is to get my girl a guitar as well, and I want to jam with all 3 of them and kind of like build that because she already sings a lot. Like my stepdaughter, she sings a lot as it is, so it'd be cool to kind of like be able to jam with her a little bit and just make it fun, you know, make it fun for them to like, oh, I want to like play this and that. Like she'll see me like I'll sit in our living room and jam a little bit of guitar sometimes and just play some music, and she'll pick up hers and kind of like start to like play a little bit as well.
Nice.
Yeah.
And were you ever formally taught, or did you end up taking, you know, band class in high school or something and learn how to read music, or was it just all by ear and you just jam sessions?
At first it was by ear. My mom then took me to a community center when I did learn mariachi music.
Yeah.
And that's where I started to play for the church and whatnot. But after I got an electric guitar, it was game over. YouTube University, you know, started watching videos and tutorials. I'm like, oh, how do they play this cover, or how do they play this song? And you can kind of start to learn the scales and like the patterns. It's like patterns in music and notes and stuff. And you'll be like, oh, okay, if this is the pattern, then this must be the next note. And you can just kind of jam something until like you can memorize it. And it's just jamming, you know, it's almost like doing jiu-jitsu. You just go from one thing to another and then you'll kind of chain things together.
Yeah.
So they work together, you know, and you're like, oh, all of a sudden you have like this piece of art where you're like, oh, this is cool. You know?
And for context, how long have you been doing jiu-jitsu?
I've been doing jiu-jitsu since 2017.
So about 5-6 years, 5 years, 6 years.
Yeah, but on and off, I want to say. I started in San Francisco when I lived out there for a bit. And And after that, I just came to Vegas, and I was just jumping from gym to gym. I went to like Extreme Couture, Cask House, Syndicate, until I found 10 Planet. 10 Planet was like where I would rather be, just because of the no-gi.
Yeah.
I love gi, and I trained it for a while.
Yeah.
But the no-gi was just kind of better for my hands, especially because art and drawing and whatnot, having to do the gi, like you have to a lot of lapels and stuff like that.
Yeah, it'll really mess with your grips and burn out your hands.
See a lot of those dudes where they have they'll have pretty nasty hands, almost like
some weird calluses. Looks like they have some weird skin disease or something.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, hard pass on that. I also started in the gi, and then I was feeling pretty good about myself and like pretty confident. And then I came up here to 10th Planet. And when you switch to no-gi, it's so much faster.
It is.
Like even the brand new guys were just destroying me, and I was like, what is wrong with me? Like, I thought the school I went to was like, had done something wrong. And then I was like, oh no, just learning. It's a slower, different, like old man's gi in the game. It's
a lot easier to like hold you down.
Yeah.
It's a lot easier to like kind of slow down the whole thing.
Slow down the whole thing. And then in no-gi, people are just like slipping all over me, choking me, taking my back nonstop. So
especially over the summer, you know how slippery it gets and how wet it gets at jiu-jitsu.
Dude, that place is like a swamp in the summer, man.
Dude, it really is
brutal.
It's nasty.
Yeah, you can't breathe in there for like the first half hour that you're rolling until your body gets acclimated.
Yeah, but you gotta love it.
So sure. I'm still interested. What happened? What happened that you stopped music?
Like, no worries. Yeah.
Like, was there just one crazy night where you're like, okay, I can't party this hard anymore, or like, I feel like something happened.
For sure. I feel like living in Vegas in general, it kind of makes you grow up fast. You know, there's a lot of things that you're exposed to at a young age, especially in public school. And like, I grew up skating too, so I was all over the place in the city, taking the bus, skating this over here, skating that over there. So it kind of makes you grow up fast. I felt like at 21, about that age, like 20, 21, I was kind of like, you know what, like a lot of this is party life. A lot of this is just a bunch of like drama here, this and that. And I was kind of just over it. I was like, which is kind of what also drew me to jiu-jitsu. Like I also, around that time is when I quit soccer. I was a big soccer player as well. I played soccer like since I was a kid.
Dude, you're like a Renaissance man.
A little bit of everything, man. Yeah. So after that, it's kind of made me feel like, you know, I don't like team sports. Kind of want to do my own thing. I want to, you know, just trust in myself and kind of just do what I do, you know, because like I said, like just in music and in art, like I would just pick something up, just watch a bunch of YouTube videos on it, become obsessed. Even to this day, there's things that I've become obsessed about and just want to learn, you know. And that's one of those things that I didn't understand that I had until I went to EMT school after I graduated high school. After music and stuff, I went to EMT school and became an EMT, a basic. And it was where I learned, like, hey, man, like, this might not be for me.
Right. But, you know, at that, after high school, EMT, then 20, 21 years old, figuring out, like, hey, man, I don't really want to party for a living. I don't want to be in the scene playing music. I feel like that's a pretty mature decision for 21 because, like, having not grown up fast. Yeah, having not grown up in Vegas, I was coming here every weekend in my 20s from LA because, you know, it's only a 3-4 hour drive.
For sure.
And we would just party our brains out and then crawl back to work on Monday morning.
Yeah. I mean, it was a lot of that. I had to grow up fast at the time. I was expecting a child at the time with one of my, an ex-girlfriend of mine. And child wasn't born. He was born. He was stillborn, I believe.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And at that time, that's when I was like, hey, I need to stop partying. I'm becoming older. I'm becoming a dad. Like I took it serious. Right. And that's where I became an EMT student and became an EMT, a basic. Yeah. And then I did a shift over at the emergency room. Mm-hmm. It's part of the school requirements. You go and you sign up, and they'll give you like a shift along with one of your partners. So me and one of my classmates that I was close to, we signed up at the same time and we went, and it was going pretty well and it was like after I had done some ride-alongs and whatnot. So I was already kind of like out in the field a little bit, I guess you can say, but I'm still pretty fresh to what it really is, you know?
Right.
So I did an emergency room shift, and we had this lady come in, and she had a heart attack. She was having a heart attack. The firefighters kind of like were doing CPR, but like that kind of CPR where it's like one-handed while they're pushing the gurney, which is like kind of like, you know, is that really CPR?
Right.
So then the point is she comes in and the doctor looks at us and they're like, you guys know CPR, right? You guys are certified? And I was like, yeah, I got my card. They're like, all right, go. I was like, that's when things got real. I was like, whoa.
Was she already dead?
No, she was moving. You could tell she was in pain. So I had to act, we had to act fast, and it was my first time. I was on compressions. My partner was on air and bagging, like air bagging and stuff like that, breathing. I forgot what it was called. It's been so long. Point is, I worked her for like 10 minutes. After that, we had a nurse come in and jump in. But after those 10 minutes, you could tell that she was already kind of like one eye constricted, one eye was dilated, kind of like, she's not doing so well. She was turning purple. We worked her for like, I want to say like 20 minutes. It was in front of the daughter and whatnot. And after that, she passed away. The doctor puts the sheet over them. They say sorry to the family member, and then they move on. They move on with their day. And that's something that kind of hit my partner strong. And I had to pull him aside. I was like, hey, we pulled him aside to the back of the hallway. And I was like, hey, man, like, this is what we signed up for. We got to be strong. We got to keep on going, because there's other people that need our help. And at the same time, I was kind of telling myself, I was like, whoa, this is what I signed up for.
I feel like shit got real, huh?
Yeah, for sure. So after that, I was kind of like, you know what? See, and also EMT pays not that well. You only get paid well up into the fire department, and that was my ultimate goal, either fire department or like what's it called, flight medic.
Yeah,
but I wasn't sure if that was military or not. So I still was kind of like in the air with the whole career. I was kind of like just jumped into it because it was something that I needed to do. I needed to pick something, and that's where I saw my friend Herms. Shout out to Herms, by the way. He's one of my best friends. He was in the band CTC with me. I've known him since middle school. And he was doing art. He was all about art. He's been hustling for a while, since he was a kid. All of his brothers, but he's the one that kind of was doing tattoos before me, and I seen him doing it. He was the singer in my band.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah. So I saw him doing his thing, and it inspired me. I was like, hey, man, like, let me go check out what you're doing. Let me come hang out. He's already one of my friends, and at the time I was kind of switching from like my band friends, and I was like, oh, I need some closer friends, someone that's like really close. And he was kind of doing his own thing. He wasn't really a part of that whole scene kind of thing. So I kind of started seeing what he was doing, and he started tattooing in high school. And
in high school?
Yeah, in high school.
Isn't that like illegal?
He was 18, 17, but
theoretically, I mean, maybe.
Yeah. Yeah, we were on the east side. So, I was actually there when he got his first machine. It was pretty cool. Ironically, it's actually right next to the shop that he owns now, where he got his first tattoo machine.
That's awesome.
But yeah, I used to go and see how he would draw it, the tattoo. Like, it's just a whole process. It was just inspiring me. Like, he was in like a little like studio like here, like at home. And he had his clients. He would come in, he would like do the tattoo, and it would just be so cool to me, like how you can like change someone's life essentially by like putting a piece of your own art. And it's almost like a transfer of energy. You're tattooing somebody, and you have these conversations with them, you have these like moments with them, and it's like I'm putting the love of the tattoo that I do on someone's skin, and it's like super cool,
And were you always an artist, like always doodling and drawing and stuff like that? Or did you learn to do art because you were passionate about this tattoo life?
So with art, I was, I did art for a while in like growing up. But there was always something that kind of like cut me off. Like, for example, third grade, I broke my arm, and my art teacher was like, what happened? You were doing so good, this and that. And, I have a broken arm. She's like, oh, that's not an excuse. And that made me be like, oh, I don't want to do art no more. I want to do music. Or like, and like sometime in like middle school too, I started to do graffiti. I was like, oh, you know what? I'm going to do a little tag or whatever. But so I made these little stickers. It was like my first day doing this. So I made a bunch of stickers with my name. Sure enough, a police cop comes in, and it was in the morning, and he like had me in the back of his room. Granted, I hadn't graffitied nothing. Like, I just made my stickers. I was like, all right, cool, we're going to start right here. And he was grilling me, bro. He was grilling me the whole day. I had no lunch. He was like, who's like crew are you in, and this and that. And I'm like, bro, I swear it's just me. It's my first day. I've never done, cop hearing you is like, oh, it's my first day doing graffiti.
Sure.
Yeah, sure it is, dude. But so he couldn't find, he's like, oh, if I find something in the books, like this and that. And obviously he didn't find anything, so nothing happened. So that was another reason why I was like, I don't want to do art no more, But yeah, essentially I seen him, and I took that whole philosophy of like, just do something over and over and really dedicate your life into it, and it'll become something. And sure enough, I carried a little notebook and a pen and paper with my pocket everywhere I went, and just doodled where I could, every day. So I eventually got to a place where I was like, okay, I feel like I can tattoo, and then just just started to jump into tattooing.
I mean, that's kind of gutsy, right? Like there's not some story here about you being this lifelong artist and then being like, oh, I'm just going to transfer my medium over to ink. You're like, I doodled for a few months and now I'm ready to like put something permanent on somebody's skin.
It wasn't a few months. I knew at like 21 that I wanted to become a tattoo artist. It wasn't until 25 where I started tattooing.
Oh, so for 4 years you're doodling in this book.
Doodling, and at the same time kind of like soul searching, you know. When I found out that my kid was no longer, I broke off the relationship and I went to San Francisco. I went there for two years.
Wow.
And that's kind of where I was like doodling, but also photography gave me a reason to walk around and take pictures. And I took a bunch of videos and met a lot of people through photography and stuff like that, you know, linking up and just exploring, you know, random spots. Like, oh, I'm in San Francisco by myself. Like, let me go down this tunnel and see what's over here. Let me go down this little alley and take some pictures, you know, random stuff. And still doodling, kind of like settled in San Francisco, got into a tech job where, you know, I got like paid pretty well, breakfast, lunch, and dinner every day, stuff like that at like, I want to say like 23 and so. And I was like, you know what, I could settle here. But then the reason I went out there is for more of soul searching. I knew I was going to be back to Vegas and I knew I eventually wanted a tattoo. So I just was like, you know what, I'm moving back to Vegas. I'm dropping this whole tech job thing. And I'm kind of glad I did. So came out here and then just worked a couple gigs until I was really, really good on like sharpening up my drawings as I felt. And there comes a point where you just kind of have to jump in, you know?
Do you remember what your first tattoo was?
Yeah, I think so. Like my first tattoo, I want to say I did it in my room, in my room at my house. I had a little studio set up. Sorry. It was before I started my apprenticeship. So I think it was an angel, like a cherub. It didn't turn out too bad either. It was a pretty cool cherub. I think he had like a bow and arrow with like I want to say a rose in it or something like that.
Nice.
Yeah, it wasn't too bad.
And so tell me about the steps. Like obviously you have to have some natural artistic ability and then you got to hone that drawing, and it feels like you went on this like 4-year like, you know, vision quest, soul searching in San Francisco. But you come back, you said there's a apprenticeship. Like if somebody wants to be like a classically trained tattoo artist, I don't even know if that's a thing. Like what are the steps? What do people do?
I don't think there's like a classical way to do it. Essentially, everyone has their own journey, and if people want to really try to drill like, oh, you have to go under this apprenticeship where you have to be the slave of the shop and you have to do all this and whatnot. And granted, like, yeah, you have to come in and do have to show some respect and essentially do those type of things. But to a certain extent, the way you get your license is through a shop owner. At least that's how it was when I got my license. Now they have a whole different thing. But before, you have to go through the shop owner, and the shop owner would be like, you know, he would have certain requirements for you to do in order for you to tattoo. In my case, I had to clean the shop every morning before 11 a.m. It was Monday through Saturday, and also pay him a certain amount of money and whatnot, and which gave me the ability to tattoo, which is, you know, fair. I get it. You know, I got to come in and show.
You got to learn how to use the machinery. I'm guessing there's different types of inks and all kinds of crazy shit like that.
Yeah, for sure. That's all stuff that I kind of learned on my own, and also with Herm, just kind of asking these questions. The best way to do is just draw until you develop, you know, study tattoos too. Look at how they're drawn, because they're drawn differently than what paper is essentially. Like, yeah, they can be drawn on paper, but you have to keep in mind the space you're working with, the shape of the space you're working with, and like essentially the canvas, right? You know, an arm tattoo would be designed different than like a stomach tattoo per se. So for tattooing, you kind of have to keep that in mind when drawing for certain things, right? But the best thing I can say is just draw. And once you feel confident in your drawings, then, you know, go get tattooed by an artist that you respect and you like, and start asking questions. And maybe if you're good enough, you know, show up your portfolio, and if they feel like they have some time or they have the opportunity to, they'll be open to it. If not, like, you know, they'll be nice enough, hopefully, to point you in the right direction, you know?
Yeah.
But there's no really certain way to really be, you know, start tattooing. Some dudes just fucking start jamming, and, you know, that's just what they do, you know?
Prison tattoo style.
Yeah, you know, and some people like that. And, you know, but for me, it's more of like I really get to be passionate about my drawings, and I love doing things that I can draw myself, you know?
So how long have you been doing this?
Tattooing, I've been tattooing for over 3 years now.
Yeah.
Full time. Yeah.
And when you say full time, I was just going to ask, and, you know, feel free to tell us as much or as little as you want. Like hours worked, pay scale, like, do you charge for a piece? Do you charge by the hour? Like, how the hell do you get your clients? Like, the whole thing seems like a weird,
it's
a weird like exchange
industry for sure. Yeah, I love talking about this stuff, man. for me, like I charge by the hour. I'm gonna go up in price. I charge 100 the hour at the moment, but things are gonna go up soon just because of everything's going up. I've been at 100 an hour for about 2 years now, which is still not a bad price. I think the medium out here is like 150 an hour is like a normal kind of rate. But yeah, so essentially like just kind of like the way I started is I kind of already had like a following through music and art and photography. I was always kind of catching people's eyes, and I was always out and, you know, marketing myself and shaking hands and stuff like that, you know, meeting people. And that kind of translated into my tattoos, and I just kind of like started doing piece after piece and kind of like started showing my style, and thankfully things just blossomed. Obviously there's days where there wasn't much, but it's just about either way, just put something out there, and, you know, essentially someone will hopefully want it. And if not, just keep doing it.
I looked up a couple questions before you came on. I was like, interesting things to ask a tattoo artist. And one of the things was, do you guys practice on pigskin?
I did.
You did?
I did when I first started. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd heard this is like a real thing. Like they have like formaldehyde pigskin that has about the same pliability as like human skin, and then you practice on pigskin.
So when I started tattooing, they also sell these like plastic things on Amazon now. So like, you know, we live in the future now with everything's on Amazon. So they have like these plastic, almost like fake skin kind of things, which are like these nice little flat pads that you can kind of start practicing your line work and your shading. They also have like these fleshy pieces of skin, you know, like hands or like full arms that you can kind of like really like dig in with some nice art. But yeah, one day I was like, hey, you know what? I'm going to practice on pigskin. I've already used up all my practice pads. So I just went to like my local meat market, like carniceria over like, on the east side, and just asked for like, yo, I'm looking for a piece of skin to tattoo. And they're like, what? Like, you want to tattoo some skin? I'm like, yeah, I need just some skin, some pig skin. And sure enough, they gave me like a big slab and just started, you know, just put on my stencil, and it worked. But I mean, it's similar to skin, but it's still not the same, because with real people move, people kind of adjust, you know. I had like a nice flat little piece of skin, which is nice to like, you know, work on, but essentially you don't really get a lot of those kind of like places on the body unless it's like the chest.
Right.
I had like a carbonated drink before I came.
You're fine, man. You're fine. So the that I've never really thought about that, right? Because like you get a traditional artist who has a nice big canvas. It doesn't move. It's flat. It's just like it's stable. But I'm thinking I'm basically a child, so I can only imagine you start going over the bone on my hand. Like you got a tattoo here. I've heard like the back of the arm, the nipple, all these places are really painful for tattoos. You know, people start moving and wiggling, and like, do people screw up their own tattoos?
It's happened to where people will like move or jump or like laugh all of a sudden, where you'll get like a little, there's some shading right there, you know? Or sometimes I'll tell them, like, if I do see it significantly, or like I'm working and they keep moving or something, I'll be polite about it. Be like, hey, I'm sorry, but you know, like when I tattoo ribs, sometimes it's hard for them to breathe and like talk at the same time. So sometimes they'll try to hold their breath, or like they'll have conversations with their friends and start laughing and don't realize that, you know, you're moving essentially. But I'll be nice. I'll be like, hey, you know, like you can just kind of have to like, you know, keep it down a little bit, or just try to like, I'll tell them to breathe normally, like breathe steady and breathe like naturally, and like at least that way I can kind of work with the skin and work with your breathing and understand like up and down, up and down. And I try to tell them to not talk for those places. But yeah, essentially, like if I'm tattooing somewhere painful, I'll let them know like, hey, it's going to suck a little bit. Just try to like stay as steady as you can. And if they're moving too much, I'll see if they want to break, or like we can even do it some other time if it gets to that point. But I'll usually try to guide them through it.
All right, what are the top 5 suck places to get a tattoo? Like just painful, frustrating.
Yeah.
What are your top 5 horrible places to get tattooed?
For me to tattoo, or to get tattooed.
For them to get tattooed.
I would say anywhere soft and like where you're ticklish, anywhere that where the sun doesn't shine. I would say like anything like the armpits, the underarms into the ribs kind of area would suck. Is I would say probably like number 1. The neck, the center of the neck, especially for males that have like Adam's apple and whatnot can get a little tricky because of the way it is.
Dude, when somebody has a throat tattoo, I just assume they're like the baddest motherfucker to walk the planet.
Yeah,
and like,
yeah.
I don't want to fight any guy who has a throat tattoo.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, for sure. They look cool. There's a lot of, I mean, you gotta be a certain type of person to have a throat tattoo. I think you gotta really be able to own it for sure. I mean, it's on you forever, so you gotta understand that as well.
So basically, all the places the sun don't shine, those places suck for tattoos.
Yeah, the feet, like the top of the feet too, I've heard sucks. The worst part I've really seen is the wrist. The wrist has been a really spicy spot, just because essentially, like, you have all these nerves in your hand, right? You feel everything with your hand and whatnot, and all of those nerves run right through your wrist. So that's like a pretty sensitive spot that I always notice is on the wrist. Just for that reason, it's all those nerve endings running through there, and it's such a little small bony area, and you're super sensitive that you know.
So what's the worst place for you to tattoo as an artist where you're like, I'm worried about this quality of work?
It has to be the throat, especially for males. Like I said, with the Adam's apple and whatnot.
Dude, it just gives me the heebie-jeebies even thinking about that.
Yeah, and it's also unpleasant for the client. But a lot of the times I notice that the worst thing about the tattoo is sometimes like having to sit for it. Really? Having to sit in certain positions and whatnot. Sometimes the tattoo isn't too bad. It's just more of like the positioning that you're in. Like, imagine getting your throat tattooed, right? You're laying on your back.
Yeah, no, it sounds miserable.
Yeah, you're laying on your back and you're just kind of have your neck extend like up, and you're essentially like seeing the world upside down for the next few hours while you're having to like feel this pain. Yeah.
So this is a rated R podcast. So anybody who's listening with their kids, go ahead and turn off the radio now. But what's either the weirdest tattoo you've done or the weirdest placement of a tattoo you've done?
I haven't done too many weird placements, I would say. A lot of like kind of like normal spots, whether it's like the arms or the thighs, the legs, some stomach tattoos. Nothing too crazy, I would say. But my weirdest experience has to have been one time when I was an apprentice. I had just finished up my day, and I went to go peace out to the guy I was apprenticing under, and he had a client there who had friends, and they were looking to get tattooed. And you can kind of obviously tell they weren't like sober, but at the same time, I wasn't like paying too much attention to them and like exactly what they were doing. But he had told me like, hey, I want to get this horrible date on my face like covered up. And he wanted to, and at the time I was like, maybe we could do it tomorrow or something. He's like, no, I want to do this right now. And
he had a date tattooed on his face, like a number.
It was like a weird, like, I don't remember the date, but it was like let's say like today, 1/9/2023, something like that, just right across his forehead, but horribly done. It was like scribbly, like it was just kind of like,
total prison tattoo.
Prison tattoo, like just, yeah, I don't know what it was, but you could tell it was poorly done. And he wanted to get it covered. He wanted to get covered up with a cassette. Those cassettes, those like square cassette things. Yeah. So at the time I was like, hey, like, what if we did like a cool knife or something that'll complement the face a little bit, Right. Essentially, when you're doing a tattoo, you want to complement the body. You want to complement the body shape, the muscle, like where you're working, So on the face, I imagine something like maybe like dark on the top that kind of comes around the face.
Yeah, like maybe matches your eyebrow or something.
Yeah, at least go with the curvature of your forehead. But no, he wanted like a big square thing right on his head. And I tried to convince him otherwise, because I showed him like an example. I was like, hey man, for us to really cover this up with the cassette's going to have to be a little big, bro. Like, it's going to be the most of your forehead, man.
You're just going to have a big square cassette tape on your forehead.
Yeah. So essentially I was trying to like guide him in a different direction, but he's like, no, I'm an upcoming artist. I need this cassette on my forehead. So, and then my boss turns to me, he's like, yeah, man, like, he's a grown ass man. He knows what he wants. Just do it. I was like, okay. So, I'm setting up, and this dude's just like, at the end of the day, I found out he was on pills, because he hit me up the next day. He's like, hey man, I think I left my pills at your shop and this and that, blah, blah, blah. If you can't find them. And we didn't find him. We didn't know what happened to him. But he was starting to be a little like, I thought he was drunk, but he was like just loopy. And once I started like really tattooing him, he just like passed out, like sleeping wise. He just like started sleeping. And it was kind of weird, because it was my first time like really tattooing a head. Right. And I just started thinking like, hey man, I have this dude's head in my hand and I have a tattoo machine on my other hand, and I'm just drilling black into it. Like, it's what I was supposed to do. It turned out to be, a decent cassette on his forehead, as decent as it can be at the time, considering like you got a big black square on your forehead, Yeah. But it just kind of made me think like, damn dude, like, this dude's really getting this on his head, and he was really insistent about it, Just kind of like, that was probably like the weirdest experience. Afterwards he jumped up. He was like, dude, this is the coolest thing ever. Thank you so much. He paid me. And I was like, cool. Yeah. But after that, I was like, I can't find your drugs, man. I don't know. He got a little upset too. He's like, what? I swear they're there, this and that. And I just didn't reply. I was like, I'm gonna let you just do your thing, bro. Like,
yeah.
I was like,
there's no rationalizing with a drug addict, bro.
Yeah, especially after doing something like that to him. It's like,
You don't have to come back and be like, I didn't mean to get this big square on my head.
Hey, man, you signed the waiver, bro. You told me you weren't drunk or nothing. So
yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Explain to me a tattoo gun, because I think I get it. Like, I think I know what it is, and the little buzzing is just like the needle moving 1,000,000 miles an hour. But what is a tattoo gun? Like, what does it do? What are the mechanics of it?
So essentially, what I use, it's considered a rotary pen. It's almost like your pen, right?
Okay.
That there's like a little rotary machine inside of it, which makes it. What happens is that it turns and it makes a pin inside of the rotary machine move, right? It kind of does this effect where it's just kind of going up and down, and you can control the velocity and how fast it goes and whatnot by adjusting it. Mine, you kind of press a button, and with just a simple like incline of the pen, it'll change the direction. It'll change the speed of it, which is used for different things, different needles, and then after that, that little pin inside of it, you get a little cartridge needle, and you can just kind of clip it on, and that pin pushes the needle, which then is what tattoos, you know what I mean? So it's just a bunch of needles moving up and down that you control the velocity on, depending on the needle size, depending on shape, shading, if you're doing what kind of shading you're doing.
What does that mean when you say shading? Define that for people that don't know art or tattoos.
Yeah. So like shading in tattoos, like there's difference between like doing a line. You'll set your, say you're using a certain type of liner. Like there's different needles that make different thicknesses and lines, and they're configured in certain ways, and there's a lot of different needles and configurations you can use. But let's just say like, you're using like a 7 round, which is 7 needles put in a round shape that are kind of put together in a circular shape, and that is usually used for lining. You can line pretty cool lines with that. It's not too thick, not too thin.
So when you're saying lines, this is when you see like these guys peel off the like purple outline and then they trace the lines to like make their design. Am I thinking this right way?
So essentially the purple outline is like the stencil that we put on you, right?
Okay.
It's almost like the stencil that we're using in order to create the tattoo. So what I'll do is let's say there's a line, just like say you're doing like a t-shirt or like, I don't know, who can have lines.
I got a surfboard on my back. So you're drawing a surfboard.
Yeah, I'm drawing the surfboard, right? The outline. So it's just essentially for outlining. So you can do that. You can also use certain liners. Like I use a 3-round liner, which is three needles put together in like a round shape. And I set it to a certain way that can also be shaded. I can also use that for shading. It's almost like shading with a liner, And it gives you like this nice, cool dotted effect to where you whip it, it'll give you like these little dots instead of a line, because you slow the machine down, which makes the needle work slower. And as you whip it, it gives you like these little, which is a cool effect for like shading technique and whatnot. Or if I'm using like a big thick liner for like a real traditional tattoo, like an anchor tattoo or something, like a heart,
right? Like a big cross.
Yeah, like just some American traditional style, you'll pull out the thicker liners, which is like, for example, like an 11-round liner, which is 11 lines put together. At that point, you turn up the machine a little bit because it has more weight to it. It's got to be more punchy. So that's where you adjust the machine and whatnot. And all at that time, you usually either like tracing a stencil or some Sharpies that you drew up on the skin and whatnot.
So you would draw. How do you like to do it?
Either or, depends on what I'm doing. Sometimes I'll do flowers with like it'll be easier to like do floral work with Sharpies and pens and stuff like that, just because you kind of get more of the flow right on the skin. But if I'm doing like a big like illustrative like piece, like a certain type of way, let's say like, I don't know, the traditional clock with like roses and whatnot,
right.
I'll usually draw it on a piece of paper. I'll take a picture of the body part, and I'll kind of get an idea of the canvas and the size and whatnot that we're working with. And then that's when I'll like make the design on my iPad. We'll go over a couple things like a consultation. We'll go over like what kind of aspects you want to add to it. And at that point, I usually just go on my own, do my own design essentially with what they give me. Sorry, hold on.
That's all right.
Just running out of breath a little.
Too many Dr. Peppers before you came over, bro.
A little bit. No, I just feel like I'm talking a lot.
Yeah,
really
go
fast.
for it.
Sorry. So essentially, yeah, we'll have a consultation. We'll go over like certain your ideas. Say you want to get like a lion tattoo, right? So we'll kind of go over a couple of references. We'll find some references, and then I'll go in and like do the design on the iPad. I'll pull it out and be like, hey man, this is essentially what I kind of have in mind. We'll do this type of shading here and there. And then if they like the idea, we'll find the right size of the tattoo. Normally, the bigger the better, just because of the detail and the way the ink sits in the skin. It's not paper. Ink eventually will expand in your skin, so it's why it's always better to go a little bigger. And then
explain that. Like, so if I wanted to get for those that are listening, I've got a little what do they call these little bobblehead things, Chris? This little thing that I have what the hell are these things called?
Funko Pop?
Funko Pops.
Funko Pops. Okay, yeah. So I got this Funko Pop of the White Walker from Game of Thrones. If I wanted to get this tattooed on my forearm or my body or whatever, sure. you would say go bigger than you actually think you should, just because then the ink will look better over time?
So it depends on like what we're doing. Like say if we're doing this exact Funko Pop, right? You want to get like a Funko Pop tattoo. I'll probably go over the design with you, and we'll find a right spot for it, and odds are something like that I would draw up. I would take a picture of it at a right angle, and then I would eventually just draw the tattoo and make it into a tattooable piece. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Which is like making things tattooable, I guess you could say.
Yeah. And is there like different quality of ink? Like do some tattoo shops use cheap ass ink so your tattoo looks like dog doo-doo like 6 months later? Or?
I think a lot of it has to do with just proper application. Just applying the tattoo is like the hardest thing in tattooing. It's just being able to get that concentration of black in the right spot and making it look smooth and pulling clean lines and making the shading nice and crisp and where it's supposed to be. Everything about tattooing is intentional. That's one thing for sure. And that's where you see the best tattoos, is where everything is put where it's supposed to be. It's something that I like to do, just keep the design clean, and essentially like it being able to tattoo it right has to come down to the drawing. You need to be able to understand the drawing all the way and understand how you're going to pretty much shade the whole thing. If you start with like hesitant drawing where you're like, I'm not sure about this design is actually exactly.
Yeah, you never want your tattoo artist to say, I'm not sure.
Yeah,
that sounds like the worst possible plan ever.
That's probably the hardest thing about tattooing, is being able to persuade the client in the right direction. Sometimes they're super stubborn on an idea where they have this thing in their mind. They're like, oh, this is going to be great, and it's when you start putting it on like actual paper and start to kind of really design it is where the problems become apparent. And sometimes they're super stubborn on what they want, and you kind of have to work with that. You have to work with the right design and try to like come up with something that they'll be satisfied that will look the best.
The fact that there's thousands of guys probably in their 40s and 50s based on when this was popular, there's thousands of dudes that have like animals ripping out of their skin.
Yeah.
Whoever thought that was a good idea? I'm just like, man, the tattoo artist did a shame by like not talking people out of that, because I see some old men at the pool sometimes at like in Vegas, and they'll just have some like eagle like ripping out of their skin, and I'm like, why did you think that was cool, man? Who talked you into that one?
Yeah, I mean, the idea could be cool. It just depends on the execution part of it. Sometimes you get some stuff and you're like, I can see where it was going, but
What do you specialize in? Because you mentioned kind of like traditional, this, that. It sounds like there's different like genres of tattoos.
Yeah, for sure, different styles. Anything that you can bring me that I like. I'm more of an illustrative tattoo artist. I like to draw a lot of the stuff that I do. Whatever gives me free reign to kind of do my own drawings is where I feel like I do the best. It's when things are super strict and that they bring me that kind of, I'm very limited to like what I can do. And
so if I just bring you a picture of Iron Man and I'm like, here, put this on my calf, that's not really your
it would probably be fun, but it's a different mindset opposed to like, it's like where, okay, this is the design, this is the picture, it needs to be just like this, opposed to like say, hey, I want a really cool Iron Man tattoo, something in more of an illustrative style where I can draw it and I can have more fun with it, is where I feel like I do best, I guess you could say.
I noticed that I was just scrolling through your Instagram, and Chris will put up a few pictures if somebody's watching YouTube right now. I noticed a lot of your stuff is black and white. Is that kind of just by design? Like that's kind of the genre you've specialized in?
My style. Yeah. My daughter was just making fun of me today about how colorblind I am, because we went to the dog park and there was a certain dog there. We were talking about it, and I was telling my lady, I was like, yeah, it was a gray dog. It was like a brownish gray, and Kylie was like, it's a brown dog, not a gray dog. It's a brown dog. And I was like, I guess, because it's like a brownish gray. It's like that very thing. So they were just making fun of me about how colorblind I am. But no, I mean, it's more of like just my style. I'll do color. I'll do some good color too. But I just prefer to do black and gray. Just like I said, it's more illustrative, more of what I love to do.
So you're not doing the big, giant, koi, multicolor tattoos? That's not your specialty?
Not color, but we could do a really cool black and gray koi fish for sure.
All right,
Yeah,
cool.
yeah, no, definitely. I'm more of into contrast.
Why is that so popular? Like, what is it about Asian culture that, like, they love koi fish?
Yeah, no, for sure.
Is it like good luck? Chris, can you look this up? Why Asian cultures love koi fish?
Koi fish, they have different meanings, whether it's going up and down. Like if a koi fish coming down your arm, I believe it's, I'm not really sure, to be honest. I know there's different meanings to it, though.
Yeah,
but
Chris has got to look this up because I'm just thinking of like, you see any of these like movies with like the Asian gangs and the Yakuza and like the mob, all koi tattoos and like this big like underwater scene. I'm like, why is that the thing? I mean, I guess it makes sense. Japan's an island, but
for sure. No, I mean they have a lot to do with tattoo culture as it is. They were part of the framework to, I want to say, American traditional designs. I want to say back in the 40s where like traditional tattoos really started to become a thing with sailors and stuff like that. It had to do a lot with Asian culture and Asian tattoos. If you pull up like two different, like if you pull up like Japanese traditional and American traditional, you can kind of see certain similarities with what they do. But yeah, Japanese tattooing is its own like lane in tattooing.
This wormhole could be an entire podcast.
Really?
Oh yeah.
Give us a little sample.
There's meanings for different colors. Which direction they're facing. In general, it means that they're never giving up through a struggle or strength.
Interesting.
But koi fish are known for their perseverance through the water by swimming upstream against the current, just as some people metaphorically do with the challenge they face. And then it goes into 20 pages of stuff.
All right, so basically we need to do a koi fish on my arm going upstream, showing power that I'm kind of a pansy, but I don't give up.
For
like
sure.
that.
Usually I'll sit down with my client, we'll do some research on stuff like that. Just to pay respects to like the culture. Just because I want to like put something on them that they won't get made fun of before.
Right.
They won't get made fun of for. I've seen like certain videos where people go get like Japanese quotes on them or Chinese quotes on them, and they mean certain totally different things. So
yeah, not good.
Yeah, even with spelling, like with like names and stuff, I'll usually like tell my client like, hey man, read it twice, make sure it's good, it's going on you forever. Like I'm putting the responsibility on you as well. Like, we both got to do our research when it comes to stuff like that.
So everyone in Karina's family, every time they see me, traditional Hispanic family, all make fun of me. There's that movie with Jennifer Aniston where they like smuggle the drugs in the RV, and the girl falls in love or has a date with the guy Scotty P, who's got the tattoo across his throat that's like no regrets.
No regrets.
And so every time Karina's family, they're like, "Hey, Scotty P, no regrets, not even one." And I'm like, dude, I kind of want to get that tattoo now, just like out of a joke. But if people don't get it, they'll just think I'm a moron. Do you do a lot of cover-up work? Because I notice like when people kind of specialize in black and white, a lot of times that's some really unique cover-up work because people, whatever, they got their ex-wife's name on their arm or whatever.
You could say, it just depends on what it looks like. If it's there's only so much I could do to it as well. And it also depends on the design. With cover-ups, I usually like to go bigger as well for what it is, and usually end up taking over the whole body part. Essentially, I would say like that's the best way to do a cover-up is almost make it into a whole sleeve. Unless the cover-up is a whole sleeve, then we can figure something out at that point too.
Yeah. I had a buddy. I won't use his name just in case there's any chance. But I had a buddy in the Army. He came in and we were just showering one day, and I'm like, Brooks, I'll just call him that. Brooks, like, that's the worst tattoo I've ever seen, right? It's just a big black square.
Oh, man.
And he's like, well, they made me cover up the swastika before they'd let me come into the military.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, so that's the story. So crazy story, man. This guy was like just born in the deep South. And, grew up. That was his life. That's what his parents did. That's what everybody did. He was just basically a neo-Nazi, or probably just a Nazi. And, then, wanted to get out of that life, saw everybody dying of drugs and whatnot, came in and they made him cover up like 3 of his tattoos because they were either racist or drug paraphernalia. And happy ending of that story is him and Sergeant Collier, this black sergeant who was in our unit, they ended up becoming like the best of friends, which was kind of like this cool like resolution story, like something straight out of the movies. But I remember seeing that and like I didn't get it because the only one that I knew with like all black tattoos was the guitar player from Rage Against the Machine, Tom Morello, who's got that whole black shoulder sleeve.
Yeah.
And I was like, why would you get just like a black square on your chest? And he was like, that's a cover up, bro. I had to black out the swastika. I was like, oh, Jesus
At
Christ.
that point, it's like, hey, anything will look better than that.
Yeah, of course.
But even blackout sleeves are becoming more and more of a thing. It's where people just get a bunch of like, say like you grow up and you get a bunch of like little shitty tattoos on you. And you either get them laser removed or just get like a whole black sleeve. And then what people will also do is like they'll make sure it's all black and it's all healed and like whatnot, and after that they'll I've seen some pretty cool tattoos where they go over it with white ink. I've never done it yet, but
that works. You can put white ink over black ink.
You'd have to layer it, so it'd be multiple sessions of like the same tattoo over and over, and eventually like it will become a different gradient, and you could add even more black to it to give it like that slight darker black to it.
Oh, what a trip!
So, yeah, for sure. I've seen things like that. I'm not exactly sure exactly how they heal, but I know that there's people that do that kind of thing and specialize in it as well.
Interesting. What's the worst tattoo you've seen?
There's a lot. Man, the worst are when you see. I don't know if this is real. There's one I saw. This is one I saw recently when the Argentina won the World Cup. It was someone got Messi tattooed on their forehead, like M-I-S-S-I, M-E-S-S-I, excuse me, right across the forehead. I wasn't sure if that was real, but those kind of things happen, and it's crazy, man, how people will do stuff like that. It almost brings me back to the whole like cassette on the forehead thing. I'm like, a little bit of flashbacks,
Have you done some cover-ups where you're like, oh man, I can't believe you walked out around in public with this on your body?
Yeah, no, I've seen a couple where I'm like questionable, like, dang, like, okay, it is what it is. People go through things or whatever, but usually they'll look better. I'll give them that, like, hey man, I don't know exactly, especially when they're so limited, like, hey, I don't want to go too big and whatnot, which makes it a little more difficult. And some cover-ups are just like, there's not really much I can do about certain things. Like some people get, like, when they get tattooed, they get scarred. So their skin will raise at certain spots, like it'll look like lines. It'll look like the tattoo is.
Does that mean that their skin just didn't respond well, or did the tattoo artist not do the right thing, or did they use cheap ink, or what?
Usually it has to do with the application. Usually that's just overworked skin and whatnot. And
interesting.
You can cover up with a certain tattoo, and then you'll come back and look at it, and you'll still be able to see certain raised parts of the body. Parts of the skin. But you kind of have to be transparent with your clients and say, hey man, there's only so much I can do for it. If you're up for it, let's do it.
Right.
Because there's only so much like polish you could polish up a turd. So that's what my friend Herm's like to say. There's only so much polishing you could do.
Yeah, and eventually it's still a turd.
Yeah, we try not to make it that though. So
yeah, do you guys? I mean, I know you guys don't do it, but have you seen any tattoo laser removal that works well and like actually looks like normal skin, or is it just look all like botched?
No, for sure. If you get lasered enough, it'll return to your skin. Considering that's if you didn't get any like scarring and stuff.
Does that shit hurt?
I think so. I have a couple tattoos on me that are like, I want to get it covered up instead of laser, just because I'd rather just go through the pain of getting a tattoo than having to go over multiple sessions of the laser over the same spot that I'm eventually going to tattoo anyways. So it's like,
so I feel like because you've been tattooed, you're a tattoo artist, you do jiu-jitsu, you get choked out for fun. I feel like you probably have a pretty good gauge of like pain threshold. Somebody's just getting a tattoo on their back or their shoulder, or their chest or something.
Different kind of pain, though.
Scale of 1 to 10, like what's the pain level?
It depends on where it's at. Like my arms are pretty easy, but I remember getting my chest tattooed more towards the center, right here on the sternum. I was almost squirming there, man. I was having to like.
It's brutal.
Yeah, I had to like take a deep breath for a second and be, hey man, hold on, give me a second to stretch out real quick, because I'm bony, I'm like skinny right here, and I'm actually getting this done on the 25th, finished up.
What is it?
It's like a headdress, kind of like a Aztec-y kind of style headdress,
nice.
To where it like comes from one shoulder to the other, and we just need to finish up this center part for the same reason that it hurts so much. But it's funny because when we were actually working on that, it was the day that the whole world shut down for the pandemic. So the day that they were announcing like, hey, like the United States has decided to go through with this whole pandemic and shut down. And at the time, I was like, hey, dude, like, can we stop this session? And I kind of have to go to the store and clean my house for some reason. I don't know, stack up on ramen. You know, I don't know what's gonna happen. So, but yeah, we're finally getting to finish this piece. After all that, but yeah, I would say that's probably the worst spot I've been tattooed. And I got my legs tattooed, my shin sucked.
Yeah, because that's right on the bone, huh?
Yeah. Anything bony where it's like pretty shitty to get hit in general, it's gonna hurt, you know.
Yeah. So this makes me think, like, bony, opposite of bony is fat. What happens if you get a tattoo and you're super fat and then you lose weight? Or what happens if you're like really skinny and you get a tattoo and you get super fat?
So if you're skinny and get fat, obviously the skin will stretch. I've seen to where things will move slightly. Like you'll get like a shoulder piece and all of a sudden they gain a lot of weight, and you'll kind of see like whether, like, depending on how it stretches and whatnot. I've seen tattoos kind of shift slightly. And then the same goes with, like, you know, people that have lost a lot of weight. A lot of the skin will be almost so the best way to tattoo is like when the skin is stretchy. It's where it's more flabby is where it becomes an issue, and it also, like, flabby skin like that will swell up fast. So you'll go over it one time and it just instantly starts to swell up, and it becomes a little more painful and harder to tattoo, just because essentially it's damaged skin, you know.
Yeah.
And
so muscular guys are easier to tattoo.
Usually, yeah, but they're also more sensitive. It's more of like kind of like dad bods, where people will sit a little bit better because a little bit of fatty tissue will help a lot.
Yeah.
Skinnier dudes, like muscular dudes, is where it starts to hurt a little more because you have less of that fatty tissue.
Yeah.
Kind of cushion. You know?
Did you see Jordan at our gym just got a butterfly knife tattoo on his arm?
Yeah, that was me.
Oh, it was you?
Yeah.
Oh shit, that was awesome, man.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I saw that. I was like, oh, speaking of complimenting the body part, that goes perfectly, right? Because he's like all into like butterfly guard and rubber guard and stuff.
Yeah,
and it's just like knife across the throat. I get the juxtaposition.
For sure.
It's pretty slick.
I love the idea too, because he has his knife that I believe he got from one of his family members that he's had for a while, and he showed me a picture. He's like, yeah, I want to get this exact knife on my arm, and it's great because, like, you know, considering jiu-jitsu, like, that's your blade right there. That whole, like, this whole bottom part or this whole top part, like, it's your blade. So to put a blade there and tattoo it, it was great. It was a great idea, and I made sure I executed it as best as I could, and it turned out pretty sharp. Thank you.
I didn't even realize it was you, but that looked great. I just saw him post on Instagram the other day.
Yeah.
What are some other cool tattoos that you've done for people where you're like, oh man, body part plus idea plus like what this means to you? Because you said something at the beginning that I would have never thought of as like, it's really like a transference of like energy from you to them, right? Mm-hmm. Like you're bringing your artwork to them, but then what's some cool stuff that you've done where you're like, oh dude, we nailed it with the conception, the execution.
Yeah, for sure. Things that just complement the body well. Certain designs that will complement like where it's at. Like, for example, I'm working on another headdress on another one of my clients, which I love the idea because I have one of my own.
Right.
Stuff like that. Let's see, what else? What's a good tattoo that I've done recently? That was a question, right? What was it?
Yeah. Just something that you feel like really landed well. Either the client was super happy or you're like, dude, I nailed that one.
For sure. I love doing like floral stuff on like girls and stuff like that because I feel like flowers are like, you can make them big and kind of like make it flowy on the arm. Those are always great. Anything like dragons are fun on the arm. Trying to think of a good tattoo I've done recently. Like Jordan's piece, for example. That was a great one. I don't know, man. I guess it just has to be. I don't know. I don't know how to answer that.
Well, for context, it's cool, man. For context, by the time this comes out, I'll be 44 here soon. And I remember when I was younger, it was like tattoos were still kind of faux pas, right? It was like, oh, like if a girl gets a tattoo, that's kind of trashy. Mm-hmm. And now, like, I know like two people, my wife and Chris, without a tattoo. Everybody else I know, other than my kids, have tattoos. So, like, what's your demographic for the average person that walks in your shop? I mean, is it still the old soldier, sailor, biker kind of crusty dude? Or are you shocked at like, oh, this is like kind of a well-to-do housewife that's like getting a floral tattoo on her arm?
We get all kinds of people walking through the door. It's become widely more accepted for sure, tattoos. I remember growing up, just seeing tattoos, my parents would be like, oh, don't get tattoos. Bad people get tattoos, you know? It's actually still, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, it's still illegal to tattoo in Japan. Which is another reason why a lot of those Yakuza members and whatnot, they hide their tattoos. Yeah. And I've also heard like people that go there that are heavily tattooed, you're not allowed to use the showers, what's it called? The baths. Yeah. The baths out there and stuff like that. And it's always polite to hide your tattoos for that reason. They find it offensive for some reason. Yeah, it's just culturally accepted now here in the United States.
Yeah,
and I feel like once the United States does something, like the whole rest of the world usually follows.
Right.
I think it's just a matter of time that'll change. Just for the sake of really Japanese tattooing, especially how like big and important it is to tattooing. It's kind of crazy to think that I think it's still shamed upon in Japan.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
Wow. So demographic across the board, young, old, rich, poor, like, doesn't matter.
For sure. Like I'll get moms that get like their daughter's name on them. I'll get certain soldiers that want like American flags and whatnot. I'm working on one on tomorrow actually on an American flag. I'll get kids my age. I'll get younger people that want to get tattooed. Everyone, all types of people nowadays. It's pretty cool to see all types of, every day is a new drawing. Every day is a new client. You don't know who usually it's like a returning client. Sometimes it's a new client. So it's just about meeting someone new every day. And thankfully, like my clientele is pretty wide, from like older folks to younger folks to people in like tattoo, like that tattoo people to that work in like electricians, stuff like that. So it's kind of widespread. Thankfully.
That's cool, man.
Yeah.
That kind of brings us back to the business. Like, I love the fact that you're raising your prices from $100 an hour to whatever, because in general, I think most people don't charge enough. If somebody's like, all right, I want to get my forearm done, let's talk through a concept, let's talk through the work. Do you do all that pre-work beforehand before like you even charge them, or like get to the point where you're, putting ink to skin?
Yeah, for sure. So normally, I'll normally work by appointment. It's kind of like the best thing I've kind of like found. It's a lot easier than like just working on whoever walks through the door.
Yeah.
That way you can kind of plan your day a little bit. So normally I'll ask for a deposit. The deposit will go towards the tattoo, and then that morning before the tattoo, I'll usually show up and draw up the tattoo on the facts that you gave me already. Or sometimes I'll even wait till the client gets there and we'll figure it out together.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. So sometimes it's pre-drawn. If it's something simple like a name, like, hey, I kind of want it in this style, I have a couple styles ready to go, so they can just choose one and go. If it's a big piece and I know I'm going to have a big day, I'll normally have like an over-the-phone consultation, or they'll just come into the shop and we'll have like an in-person consultation to kind of really get down with the details to give me the time to draw. Because sometimes I'll take up to like 2-3 hours to draw up a single tattoo.
Yeah.
And then after that, I got to tattoo it,
Yeah,
so that's a whole day on its own. But it's just part of the process.
And if somebody is getting like that big tribal headdress across their chest, how long can somebody sit for a tattoo before they're like, I tap out, or like your body just starts to shut down, right?
So normally it depends on the piece, and depends on the person too. Women sit a lot better than men, I'll say that.
Really?
I've seen, yeah. I mean, just women go through a lot more pain than guys.
Yeah, it's true. If they went through childbirth for 18 hours or something, getting a 3-hour tattoo probably ain't shit.
Yeah, so it just depends. Sometimes for something like that, I'm breaking it down into sessions. We're not done with it yet with my client, but for example, we'll figure out the design and the placement, and we'll do the line work one day, right? And just all that is its own thing. For example, like the headdress, and having to like place it perfectly and make sure that it fits nice and it's supposed to be the way it's supposed to be and it's even on both sides. That could take up to like an hour or two just on its own. So it's just a process, and just kind of taking our time with it is one thing that I found you find the best results in. Just take your time, cross your T's, dot your I's, and just, focus on little by little by little, and then eventually it'll just become all one piece,
And so can that guy sit there for 3 hours, 2 hours, 10 hours? Like,
as long as he can sit. So I've seen guys just sit like champions for like over 8 hours.
What?
I'm like, cool. Yeah. You sat all, you've sat well this whole time, man. Thanks. There's also dudes that get into it like 1 hour in, they're just squirming.
Yeah,
and
it's just like sweating, just can't handle it.
Yeah, at that point, I'll recommend some numbing cream. If it becomes a problem, we're like, hey, man, I don't know if we should continue today. The next day, we'll probably apply some numbing cream where it'll kind of set in before we start. Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah.
And then a couple more questions, and I'll let you get out of here, man.
Oh, yeah, we're good. I'm not on a time crunch.
All right, cool. I always wonder, because we got a buddy, Mike Eaton. He's been on the podcast before, professional comedian. He's actually in Vegas. We might hang out with him this week. He's got all kinds of crazy fucking tattoos. Yeah. Like he just comes up with some. He got a milkshake on his hand, like milkshake, and then he's always getting this nutty stuff. And he's got this one great tattoo of a bright pink donut from like out of The Simpsons, right?
Okay.
And you know, when he first got it, I remember how vibrant it was, and he did all the aftercare stuff and da da da.
Yeah.
And then eventually, like anything else, it fades. Like, I'm trying to think about how to ask this question. What's the percentage of like diminishing quality over time? Like, you know, you get something colorful and brand new and it just like really pops, right? It almost looks 3D.
Yeah.
And then over time it's going to fade, it's going to diminish. Is that just part of the process? Is there a way to protect against that? Do you get it recolored? Like what do people do when they look down? They're like, that used to look so hot. Now it's like not so hot no more.
And that's kind of to be expected with tattoos, right? Because you're tattooing skin, not paper.
Right.
To where essentially the way the tattoo works is you're inserting ink into the skin in the dermis or the epidermis, one of the two, second layer of the skin, and it's going to expand. So I would say like with things like that, especially with color, and it also depends on the color of your skin,
right?
To where sometimes people
pretty pasty white, so
yeah. So usually like that color will last a little bit longer on them opposed to someone who's darker skinned, but I guess the percentage that diminishes, I wouldn't know. It just depends on how you take care of it. If it hits a lot of sun, it'll start to diminish a lot quicker, especially if it hits a lot of sun when it's healing. Like during the summer, it's like kind of like the worst time to get tattooed because you want to go swimming, you want to go out hiking, you want to show it off.
Right.
To where the sun hits it more and it'll cause it to almost fade a little bit more than if it's in the wintertime in like a nice protected spot where it doesn't really hit much.
Yeah.
You'll have longer longevity on it. I guess you'll have more longevity on it. So I guess the question is like, it just depends on where it is and who got the tattoo, right?
Yeah.
But all tattoos tend to kind of like diminish a little bit in time, just like with the body, right?
Yeah.
So for those people that are like, oh, what are you gonna do when you're 80 with tattoos? I'm like, I'm gonna look like a fucking 80-year-old tattooed dude. I'm gonna look like a badass, man.
Right.
It is what it is,
Right. My skin ain't gonna look the same either, bro.
Yeah, exactly.
And my hair ain't gonna be there.
My hair might not be there. My cheeks might be a little sunk in a little bit, but hey, it's gonna be what it is. So it just depends on how well you take care of it. But all tattoos will kind of diminish on its own.
And can you get them recolored? Like I've got a not horrible. It's fine. But I got a tattoo on my back of like a surfboard with a sun and an ocean around it from when I was in the Army. Everybody goes and gets at least one drunk Army tattoo. And I've always thought like I should just get it recolored just so it looks a little bit more vibrant. Can you get stuff recolored and like a touch up?
For sure. Yeah, no, I'll have certain clients come in and say, hey, I like this tattoo, but I wanted to get it more vibrant. It's been like 10 years or so, so what I'll do is you can rework it. So what we'll do is we'll have a session where I kind of like rework what's there. Sometimes I'll improve a little bit of things here and there and kind of give it my own flair a little bit. But yeah, just kind of like bringing it back to life to what it was and what it could be,
Love it, man.
Yeah. But usually with those tattoos that are a little older, there's only so much you can do to them to kind of bring it back to life. But people usually appreciate that.
Yeah,
for sure.
That's great, man. So last two questions I always like to finish with.
Man. You're good.
Cool, man. One, like it's 2023. Obviously, you're raising your prices, which is great. Good for you. What's the thing you're like most looking forward going into the year, either personally, professionally, something you got on the radar, whatever. What's on your radar that you're like, man, I'm kind of fired up about this.
For sure. One of my goals, hopefully this year, is to buy a house.
Nice.
So that's like one of my main goals. I've been trying to save up. I'm trying to like get my taxes in order, see how much I should claim, and I'm claiming the right amount, in case the IRS is out there.
Right. Of course.
Trying to figure all that out in order for me to get ready to buy a house. Because I've been renting this whole time. So that's kind of one of my main goals there, is to get settled into a nice home. And honestly, just tackle this whole year. Honestly, I want to join more tournaments in jiu-jitsu. I want to do more. I want to be more active in that sense. I'm a blue belt, and I've been a blue belt for a couple of years, so I feel like it's time for me to
time to step up.
Yeah, just start to take next and fucking do some more tournaments, really get out there, and I feel like I could do pretty well. So that's another one of my goals, is just kind of sharpen my jiu-jitsu up. Just because up to this point, I've been growing my career and trying to just stay stable as an artist, and it's kind of hard with a kid and a family and dogs, so. But it's just about staying motivated and having those goals. As you can tell, I don't know if you could tell, my background right now is where's my phone? It's a purple belt. So
I love that, dude.
That's like my end of the year goal, hopefully. Just for my own. I mean, even if I don't get promoted, I feel like I'll be at that level. That's just like where I'm headed to.
It's a good goal, man. And what I've noticed at 10th Planet is like they really like to promote after tournaments, like good showing in a tournament, kick some ass at a couple tournaments, prove that you can like kill the other gyms and you're good.
For sure. I'm more focused on just making sure I can kill.
Yeah.
You know, even if I'm a blue belt, it's okay. If I can kill, then it's okay. It'll eventually be shown that at my level, you know?
Yeah.
But my goal right now is to just be that killer and just focus on that. And then everything else will follow, like the belts and the rankings and whatnot.
That's awesome, man. Well, I do mortgages. My wife's a realtor, so we can help with your Vegas property here.
Yeah,
she doesn't really do real estate in LA because I've got so many referral sources down there. But up here, we don't know as many people, so she'll help you out.
Awesome.
And then this is my all-time favorite question. I feel like I learned so much about people. What's your favorite movie and why?
I'm a big Star Wars nerd.
For real?
Yeah, I love Star Wars. Growing up, I loved Aliens, the whole sci-fi feel, the whole space feel. I have a Mars Attacks tattoo on me.
Nice.
Just because I loved Mars Attacks growing up. But Star Wars is really cool to me just because of the whole story of Anakin and how he became Darth Vader, and he just fell into the wrong thought process and became almost like a prisoner of his own mind and became who he was, you know. So
what's your favorite Star Wars movie?
I want to say episode 1, 2, or 3. Like those were like my favorite, just because I grew up at that time and they were real inspirational to me. So I'd say I want to say 3, just for the action scenes, and all the fighting and the turn of events that kind of like, oh my god, this happened. I don't
Order 66, right?
Yeah. Just all that chaos, like it fascinates me. I've seen all the Clone Wars too, like the cartoon series.
The cartoons are excellent.
Yeah.
I think the cartoons are almost better than the 1, 2, and 3 movies.
Tells a lot of the story. It's a lot of background story too, which is crazy. It's why I love Star Wars. There's just so much detail to it, and you just kind of dive into it for a while.
Have you had a chance to do any cool Star Wars tattoos?
I've done 1 or 2, nothing too crazy, but I'm always down for Star Wars tattoos. I'd love to. I think I'm going to draw some up.
Yeah.
Just like put them out there as flash designs and see who wants them.
I saw one that was really cool. I saw a guy that had like R2-D2 on one leg and C3PO on the other leg. Nice. And it just, when they're walking, he kind of had it like towards the back of his calves.
Yeah.
So I saw him walking down the just the aisle in some grocery store. And it looked cool because it was like R2-D2 and C3PO walking next to each other. And so I walked up to him. I'm like, "Hey man, I don't normally do that, but those are some pretty sick tattoos, man." He's awesome. Like, "Thanks, bro." He's like, "I get so many compliments," and I was like, "Yeah,
cool.
That was a pretty cool angle." So cool, man. Well, I loved having you on the show. Maybe I'll get this piece on my back touched up because it hasn't been touched since I was a drunkard 19-year-old in the Army. And yeah, man, I'll see you at the gym.
Awesome, man. Yeah, it was great. Thanks for having me. It was great being here, dude.
Cool, man.